The Senate will come to order. Senator Murphy.
Good morning, Mr. President. I impose a call of the Senate.
The Senate is now under call. Senator Murphy.
Mr. President, I move that further proceedings under the roll call be dispensed with and that the Sergeant at Arms be instructed to bring in the absent members.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Thank you. Members, in our tradition, if you'll please stand. In our tradition, we start with prayer, and today's chaplain is Reverend Robert Pish. He's from St. Bartholomew Catholic Church in Wayzata. Following the prayer, please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please be assured that before we begin this one prayer, today does not reflect the prayers that we say for you every day for the important work you do. And let us pray. O God, source of goodness, let us not let another day go by without considering whether we are good people. Let us not forget that our standards of goodness should always connect us together to higher things, to something larger than ourselves. Do not let us waste the blessed freedom of this country on lesser matters. Help us remember that true good unites, and a desire to define the good alone leaves us many. That even those who believe in God and those who don't need to unite on higher ideals, the ones this country was founded on. May we not use a profusion of words with others because we lack courage to say the few words that are most important. Let us listen not to respond or find fault, but to learn and understand and to see how to work together. May we consider that the best example we may give to those who look to us for guidance on how to live life well is that we can admit mistakes and work to overcome them. Let us remember that the good that endures is not what we achieve for ourselves or how we benefit those we like or support us, but how we respond to those in need who need what we can do. And at the end of our day, may our last act not yield to our anxiety over the ever uncertain future, and let us not answer one more email, write one more note, or pursue some gratification that allows us to forget our worries, but to go out and look up at the stars, to remember to talk to you, to look at the peaceful faces of our children asleep, and to remember that the thing that all truly good people have is the audacity to hope. Amen.
The secretary will take the roll.
Abler, Anderson, Barr, Bolden, Carlson, Champion, Clark, Coleman, Swadzinski, Dames, Dibble, Dornick, Draheim, Drazkowski, Duckworth, Farnsworth, Fateh, Frentz, Green, Grunhagen, Gustafson, Hochschild, Herr, Heintzman, Hoffman, Housley, Howe, Jasinski, Johnson, Johnson-Stewart, Klein, Coran, Kroon, Kunish, Kupek, Lang, Latz, Liskey, Limmer, Lucero, Mann, Marty, Matthews, Make-Wade, McEwen, Miller, Mitchell, Mohammed, Murphy, Nelson, Umuver-Baton, Pappas, Pa, Port, Pratt, Putnam, Rarick, Rasmussen, Rest, Seeberger, Utke, Weber, Wiesenberg, Westland, Westrom, Wickland, Zhang.
Members, a quorum is present. Members, if you want to follow along, I'm reading from today's Senate agenda, which is dated Saturday, May 17th. We will begin with the third order of business. Messages from the House. The Secretary will read the first message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce the passage by the House of the following Senate file as amended by the House, in which amendments the concurrence of the Senate is respectfully requested. Senate File Number 1740, a bill for an act relating to education policy, making changes to kindergarten through grade 12 education. Senate File Number 1740 is herewith returned to the Senate. Signed, Patrick Duffy Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
I am now calling on Senator Swadzinski for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate do not concur in the amendments by the House to Senate File 1740, and that a conference committee of 5 members be appointed by the Subcommittee on Conference Committees on the part of the Senate to act with a like conference committee appointed on the part of the House. Thank you, Mr. President.
To that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Secretary will read the next message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce the adoption by the House of the following House Concurrent Resolution herewith transmitted. House Concurrent Resolution Number 2, a House Concurrent Resolution relating to the adjournment of the House of Representatives and Senate until 2026. Signed, Patrick Duffy Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
I am now calling on Senator Murphy for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that to adopt the House Concurrent Resolution Number 2.
Please explain the resolution.
Members, House Concurrent Resolution Number 2 sets the date for the 2026 legislative session to begin on February 17th, 2026 at 12 noon. By adopting this resolution, it allows us, when we end this session, to pick up our work again, beginning in February on the 17th of 2026. And I ask for your adoption.
To that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Members, we will now move to the fifth order of business, which is reports of committees. Senator Murphy for a motion to adopt the committee reports.
Mr. President, I move the committee reports printed in the agenda be adopted.
On the adoption of the committee reports, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Members, we will now proceed to the seventh order of business, which is second reading of House bills. The Secretary will read the House file numbers.
House File Numbers 2464, 3321, and 2433.
The House files have been given their second reading. We're now moving to the eighth order of business, which is introduction and first reading of Senate bills. The bills listed on today's introduction calendar are given their first reading and referred as indicated. Now moving to the ninth order of business, members. That is motions and resolutions. We will adopt the author's motion as one motion. All in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Members, Senate Resolution number 49 and 50 will be referred to the Committee on Rules and Administration, and remember, no action is required. The Secretary will report Senate Resolution number 51.
Senators Murphy and Johnson introduced Senate Resolution Number 51, a Senate resolution relating to conduct of Senate business during the interim between sessions.
Senator Murphy for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt Senate Resolution Number 51 and ask for a roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Senator Murphy, please explain the resolution.
Mr. President and members, this is the resolution that allows the work of the Senate to continue in the interim while we are in adjournment.
Any other discussion to this request or motion? Seeing none, the Secretary will take the roll on the adoption of the resolution. Senator Hochschild, those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report Senator Herr votes aye.
Senator Herr votes aye.
And Senator Rest votes aye.
And Senator Rest votes aye. All senators having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 63 ayes and 0 nays, the Senate Resolution number 51 has been adopted. Remaining under motions and resolutions, I am now calling on Senator Dibble for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the foregoing recommendations and conference committee report on Senate file number 2370 be now adopted and that the bill be repassed as amended by the conference committee.
On that motion, to that motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
No, you have to, now they're telling me that we want to explain it now.
Oh, okay.
Before we adopt it.
Thank you, Mr. President. So on my motion that the conference committee report on Senate file number 2370 be adopted, Mr. President and members, this is the Cannabis Policy Conference Committee. We wrapped up our work yesterday, and I'm happy to report that the conference committee report reflects a compromise between the Senate and the House. I'm especially pleased to report that all of the Senate provisions were accepted, maybe a couple of minor tweaks here and there. And so that was a big win, everyone, for the Senate today. And then we took in a number of provisions from the House. And so rather than reciting all of the provisions from the Senate, which had a fairly thorough presentation a couple of weeks ago on that, I'm happy to respond to questions if those do come up about what we brought into the conference committee. I'll just mention the new items that are before our chamber today. So new provisions include the establishment of a lower potency hemp edible wholesaler license. And there's quite a bit of language that goes along with that establishment that has to do with all the licensure standards and all the practices and business activities and what's required to be a successful applicant. But in short, members, what this allows for is for those who are particularly interested in lower potency hemp edible, what we call edibles, which are actually beverages, who want to do wholesaling, who want to deliver those products from manufacturers to retailers, particularly to liquor stores and the like, can occupy that space in the business. We offer a delivery endorsement for retailers to deliver their product in the low potency hemp edible market as well. And those regulations are substantially similar to what we already have for cannabis delivery. There are some changes in potency for the non-intoxicating cannabinoids for beverages and edibles. And if you're interested in the details, I'll come back to those. Just ask me about those. Those license holders who are in what we call the med combo business, those who offer medical cannabis, who now want to sell adult use cannabis, can transport their products.
Senator Dibble?
Yes.
Will you pause just 1 second? I'm going to ask the members if they will quiet down. I'm getting text complaints of it being too loud and individuals are not able to hear you. So members, if you are interested in having some conversation, please be so kind as to take your conversations off the Senate floor. Thank you, Senator Dibble, for allowing me to interrupt, and my apologies.
Thank you, Mr. President. So just returning quickly to the those what we call med combo businesses, they'll be able to transport their products between businesses who also hold medical combination license, so they can do some business between each other, sell and transfer their products between each other. We will now allow for those who are manufacturing low potency hemp edibles to create products here in Minnesota that are not legal to sell in Minnesota, but they can export those products to other states. There's quite a bit of language around the circumstances, conditions, and requirements in which they can do that to provide for ensuring that those products are compatible and legal in those states to which they're exporting, and also quite a few provisions to make sure that those products do not find their way back into Minnesota to be sold illegally. There had been a requirement, moving on to a new subject, there had been a requirement that when the product was being transported or delivered, that the delivery be done through randomized routes. That's turned out not to be effective for security means, so there's quite a bit of new language to provide for security of transporting these products around our community in different ways. I will now turn to Senator Port to talk about provisions that we did actually send out from the Senate around expungement that was amended fairly substantially as we bring it back to the Senate.
Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, if you'll remember when we passed the Judiciary Bill, there were two policy changes from the Cannabis Expungement Board that we originally included in that bill that was moved to the Cannabis Policy Bill. The first is largely a technical change on how cannabis convictions eligible for expungement are referenced in statute. The 2023 bill referenced these convictions by their statutory reference rather than directly naming the convictions. This bill changes the references to naming the convictions directly so that past and future, to sort of past and future proof them against just statute number or reference number changes. That remains unchanged in this bill. The second piece that was changed, what passed off the Senate floor, allowed for review of all offenses, not just cannabis. The language that came back from the House was the most that House Republicans were willing to agree to. This addresses an expungement issue that the board is running into with the courts. Right now, the Cannabis Expungement Board is tasked with review for possible expungement and or resentencing of various felony-level cannabis convictions. These convictions often appear with other charges that were ultimately dropped, both cannabis-related and not. The Cannabis Expungement Board can currently only review cannabis-related convictions. The courts, however, cannot bifurcate court records when sealing them, so they must either seal the record entirely or leave it entirely open. And that means that individuals who have cannabis records that can be expunged but also have charges that were dropped ultimately cannot receive the expungement relief. This change allows the Cannabis Board to review and consider expungement for all cannabis charges, regardless of how they were ultimately adjudicated, which will allow the courts to fully seal the records for those eligible individuals. I will say, members, that this references to the board's best guess about 14% of the eligible felony cannabis convictions. So there still is work to do, but this was the most that House Republicans were willing to agree to, and we did take the compromise for this time, but we'll come back to address this in the future.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to Senator Port for that piece. It was good work. It's also kind of complicated, so I'm glad she handled it and explained it. So moving on, Mr. President, somewhat related to this subject, for those applicants who are defined as social equity applicants, members might recall that that includes those who have been convicted in the past from low-level cannabis crimes, kind of a technical oversight that didn't include those who had experienced a conviction but a stay of their adjudication, or who had experienced and received an adjudication of delinquency. So those folks are now also defined as eligible to be social equity applicants. We have a testing facility. You know, we of course have very strong provisions for consumer protection in terms of concentrations, cleanliness, et cetera. That's done at testing facilities, at labs. One of the most important labs that we have that's coming online for this purpose is awaiting its national accreditation, and so they'll be able to test while they're waiting for that full accreditation status. Anyone who is working in this part of the industry will now be required to report if they receive a loss of their accreditation. We have a provision that's related to the retail delivery, allowing for the technology platforms like DoorDash and the like to be able to deliver product, and there's some stipulations and requirements to provide for public interest and consumer confidence in that delivery. We do have a slight change as well to that lab in question, who is operating on consumer testing and product testing and and quality assurance already, and a number of other areas. We're waiving their requirement before they get licensed to have a labor peace agreement for a period of time until they come in for licensure renewal. We did provide for, but in a slightly different format, for reciprocity for medical cannabis patients who are in the tribal medical cannabis program, as well as those who are coming from out of state. The proposal that we had some tax implications and the like. We've removed that so that we didn't have to take a trip through the tax committee and also have the tax bill pick up some costs, some very minimal costs, but costs nonetheless. Absent those tax implications, we do provide for visiting patient reciprocity in Minnesota. And then finally, Mr. President, there's a big discussion, members might be aware, the public is certainly aware, around the affordability of medical cannabis. That's been a big challenge for a very, very long time. Adding to that the concern of the stability and the availability and the price of medical cannabis going forward as the adult use market takes hold here. We've seen in other states without certain kinds of provisions and protections, the medical cannabis market fails in some cases. And so people who need that to alleviate symptoms and the like lose out on having access to the medicine that they need to bring relief from symptoms that they struggle with on a wide array of issues. We have actually built in some strong provisions, and we do see that 5 additional businesses are coming to Minnesota who have applied to get into the medical combination market. So that's encouraging, and we're providing some other measures in terms of patient access and affordability and streamlining that hopefully also brings costs down. But some really believe that the solution to that is what we call the streamlining of the availability of the supply chain, because at the end of the day, if you're separating the plants and making sure that they're segmented for what they can be used for, at the end of the day, it doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people. We can control for access and supply into the medical market at kind of the end of the process, at the point of sale and beyond. And so streamlining and unifying the supply chain is something that we're interested in doing, but it's a big change and it has a lot of implications. So we're asking the Office of Cannabis Management to bring back a legislative proposal to put before us next year. That concludes my presentation, Mr. President, and I will respond to questions.
Members, we're on the Dibble motion. I am now going to Senator Abler.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I appreciate the discussion. As the bill left, we had a lovely amendment to worry about sober homes, and then you couldn't use cannabis in a sober home. In the wisdom of the conference group, they decided that was that needed to be improved upon. And on the whole topic, Mr. President, I still insist that someday we're going to regret this, but I'm like the guy who missed the train running after the train, and the train is long after the station gone. But I just wanted to urge people to be cautioned. But at least the people we want to respect are those people in sober homes. So if Senator Dibble would yield for a question, Mr. President.
Senator Dibble, will you yield? He will yield. Senator Abler.
All right, well, thank you. And just so people know, and I'm not going to go very long on this, they kept the original language that it does not apply to, the freedom to use this does not apply to sober homes. And then it was improved to add some language that I don't think it improves it at all, but except that a resident of a sober home is a patient enrolled in a registry program must have access to medical cannabis flower and medical cannabinoid projects subject to the restrictions of requirements in A and B, which are pretty minimal. So my question is and I think this is really unfortunate because having had significant involvement with some of the treatment facilities, that many of the residents of these sober homes are triggered by the smell of marijuana. Maybe if it was a capsule or something, it wouldn't be such a problem, but even that would bother some people who don't get to use anything, and the ones that are abstinence-based. But so, Mr. President, Senator Dibble, if a sober home had people that were triggered, could they at least limit where this person would smoke the flower? Could they make them go out of sight? Could they have a little smoking house, or make them wash their clothes before they go back in the building? Or is there any way to avoid, to make this at least a little bit less harmful? Thank you.
Senator Dibble, specifically to the question.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. President, and in fact, and I'll look to Senator Port to correct me if I say something that's incorrect. The conference committee wasn't comfortable with an entire total ban and exclusion for patients who are in the medical cannabis program. These are, of course, people who have certain conditions that can only be addressed and alleviated by access to the medicine that they need for fairly substantial concerns, and they thought it mitigated against their sobriety journey and the like. It's similar to how we currently treat healthcare facilities. Only those who are in the registry program, subject to reasonable restrictions. And so, to the issues that Senator Abler describes, that is a concern that was shared by the conference committee, and that is a valid and legitimate concern. Smokable forms probably are not advisable in a sober home setting for a whole bunch of reasons. And so it was the thought that, if it works in healthcare settings, healthcare institutions to provide for reasonable restrictions, the same is probably true in sober homes.
Senator Abler.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. And frankly, I'm not surprised that it got changed on the way back. I was just hoping we could have a little more security. And so just as this goes forward, the unintended harm that the pleasures of the bill and the great excitement about doing all this, I get all that. There's going to be some unintended harm that I'm still reminding everybody about, and particularly those who have already fallen off the edge of the cliff with regard to their substance problems. I hope that as different sober homes find ways to be creative in avoiding triggering people, that those are going to be allowed, and we might be revisiting this, but for Mr. President, for that reason, I'll be voting no on concurrence. Thank you.
Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. President. And to Senator Abler's point, this is a really critical sort of cross-section and one that we've thought about deeply. What we've found in the last year with healthcare facilities able to already both allow medical patients to access their medications, but also for the medical facilities to put reasonable restrictions on, is that most of them do not allow combustion. So flower, something that you can smoke that puts out a scent or things like that. What we have seen, though, is that folks in these hospice settings or in sober homes, for many of them, opioids have become the reason that they are in those sober homes, and they have pain that they were at some point trying to manage, and it turned into a very intense, very damaging addiction because of how opioids are managed in this country. So finding a way to both manage pain while also being able to help folks go through a recovery process is really critical, and medical cannabis has been one of those ways. So ensuring that those patients have access to the medical products only, not adult use, and that the sober homes, along with the medical facilities, are able to put reasonable restrictions on them, felt like the correct balance, which we can continue to see as we move forward. But we hope those, those reasonable restrictions will be able to keep other people safe, while also ensuring that folks who are on the medical program and need access to their medication are able to continue receiving that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Abler.
And I'm not going to go long. I wouldn't have spoken again, but thank you, Senator Port. And I know how thoughtful you are, and we've debated this. But, Mr. President, there is abstinence versus harm reduction. There's some people that must be in an abstinent place, and those are drying up with this kind of change. Some of the people who have no way to live and to succeed in their recovery path is going to be hampered by this. That's all I got, Mr. President. So thank you, and I know it's a very thoughtful discussion. It's a long one. I don't want to spend 2 hours on it, but thank you.
To the Dibble motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The conference committee report is adopted. The secretary will give the bill its third reading.
Senate File Number 2370, a bill for an act relating to cannabis, including the Office of Cannabis Management as an agency for the purpose of having a government-to-government relationship with tribal governments.
Third reading. Any other discussion? Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I appreciate the opportunity to serve on the Cannabis Conference Committee this year and the continued conversation on this topic since the original bill to legalize back in 2023 passed. And Mr. President, what I would just say is, in my view, and I think many Minnesotans would agree with me, that the promise of the 2023 legalization has fallen short so far. I think one of the biggest concerns that I've heard from the folks that I represent is on regulatory uncertainty. Whether it's been businesses, local units of government, whether it's been waiting to find a permanent appointment to be the director of the Office of Cannabis Management, legal challenges to the social equity program. Since the bill passed in 2023, there have been many stumbling blocks along the way. And I think, Mr. President, one of the flawed starting points from the bill back in 2023, we're seeing a continuation of today in this conference committee report, which is a focus on shaping an industry how a certain ideology wants it to see, wants it to play out, versus having a focus on public health and public safety. And again, in this bill, we see an expansion of peace labor agreement requirements. In no other place in Minnesota law do we require, in order to get a business license, that you have a labor union sign-off. But in this conference committee report, we are making it more complicated for organizations like hemp manufacturers to be able to participate. I'm also concerned that we had some provisions that are missing. Senator Nelson did a great job coming to our conference committee and talking about data-driven limits on the amount of THC that can be sold in legal products, and what we've learned about how high potency products can have very adverse and permanently adverse reactions on consumers. We also did not include stronger labeling requirements. Mr. President, if you were to look at tobacco and how that's regulated here in the state of Minnesota, there's much stricter labeling requirements than what we're seeing coming out of the Office of Cannabis Management. And so I think there's missing work in this bill that could have helped protect Minnesota consumers. And we see this within a context where some of the promises that were made back in 2023 are quickly coming to turn out not to be true. We were told that when we legalized cannabis and collected tax revenue, that money would go towards helping local public health, that money would go towards educating pregnant women about the adverse effects of consuming cannabis while pregnant. And yet we're seeing in budget bills in this body cuts to those programs. We're seeing cuts proposed by the governor. We're seeing proposed cuts to local aid that was supposed to be funded with the taxes from cannabis. And so, Mr. President, I'll be recommending a no vote on this. I think this is an issue that will continue to come up in the legislature, and I would just encourage my colleagues to refocus our efforts on protecting the health and safety of Minnesotans, on trying to restore some of the promises that were made back in 2023 that have fallen short, and avoid overcomplicating this industry with divide-the-dollar politics. So I appreciate being a part of this conversation, and there's more work to be done. Thank you, Mr. President.
Members, remember we're on final passage of the conference committee report. Senator Port, and then we'll go to Senator Dibble, and then we can vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will be quick. I think overall this bill is good. It is mostly clarifying policy changes based on what we've seen so far through the licensing process. I am glad that the expungement piece was included, though it does not go far enough, and we will need to come back and address that. For me, that is the cornerstone of this bill and why we legalized and decriminalized in the first place. And we need to make sure that we are doing that piece right and living up to what we told Minnesotans we would do with that. I do want to take a minute and say, Senator Rasmussen is not wrong about the promises that we made in the original cannabis bill. we were very thoughtful about where we put investments. And I know as things go on, they get moved to other committees and sort of decoupled from the original policy. But it is disappointing to see things like, the U of M's funding for research around this be cut, to see the local aid be cut, to see conversations about increasing the tax on cannabis, which we fought very hard to keep at a low percentage, because we have seen that when you try to make it too high, that the effect is actually encourages the illicit market, because it's less expensive to buy the illicit product than it is to buy the regulated product. I think it is important that we remember that we legalized adult use cannabis because prohibition had been a harm on our communities. It was not a successful policy. It was a harm to our communities and was not something that was, working to keep cannabis out of our communities. So a legalized, regulated market is the way to do that. I worry that we are moving away from some of those policies in pursuit of revenue, and I want to just caution us against seeing this market as a cash cow to sort of fix other things, especially if we are disinvesting from the things that we originally said were critical with passing this legislation. Those are conversations that I will continue to raise as other budget bills come before us, where that money is actually being moved. This bill is a good bill. It's strong policy. It moves the conversation forward. It moves the agency forward. People should support it. But we should be cautious and thoughtful to ensure that we are actually achieving the things that we set out to do with the legalization of adult use cannabis. Thank you, members. Vote green.
Senator Dibble for final words before we vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I won't repeat everything that Senator Port said, but just to say that I agree with her perspective on all the issues that she raised. I did want to respond quickly to Senator Rasmussen on the issue of labor peace agreements. It does not mean that a particular work site or business will be unionized. It just means that there will be a fair and even-handed treatment should the employees get together and try to see if they can collectively bargain for the wages and conditions of employment. It just means that the kinds of practices that we've seen in the past would not be. There would just be some agreement of some terms and conditions to set the stage and the table. I wanted to just go back to the conversation very, very quickly about medical cannabis. Everyone knows that adult use cannabis was not my wheelhouse. It was the leadership of Senator Port and others. I was the chief author of the medical cannabis bill 10 years ago, and that was very, very encouraging because that was many, many decades of effort to gain access to critical and crucial medicine that people need, that they don't have access to because what was available to them was either nothing or legal drugs, legal pharmaceuticals that were too expensive or ineffective or had such consequential side effects as to be not worthwhile. In particular, of course, people living with HIV/AIDS, people struggling with pain issues, and those with seizure disorders. And we've done a number of things to improve. That was done under a very, very difficult set of circumstances with a lot of compromises that made the medical cannabis program extremely difficult, opaque, inaccessible, and very, very rigid. We've made many, many changes over the year to bring the price down, ease access, and still the medical cannabis market, access to that medicine is expensive and difficult for too many people, and I am concerned. There were some changes that were brought forward as proposals this legislative year. People were nervous about the true motivation and intent behind the people who were bringing those changes, that it wasn't an authentic effort to create and stabilize the medical market, but had some other kind of a motive. I understand that and respect that concern. However, I'm given assurances by those who are opposed to those proposals that yes, indeed, other businesses can move into the space, create create cost competitiveness, can create innovation, and all the things, and create more access for more people at an affordable. I'm going to be keeping a very, very close eye on that because what has happened in other states cannot happen here. We cannot allow these children to go without the medicine they need. Their lives and their families would be devastated if that happened. So I'm keeping a very close eye on the market as it develops and matures, as well as this proposal to bring back the streamlining proposal, the supply chain unification, and we'll have more conversation about that in the coming year and next year in this body. Otherwise, this is a good bill. It makes a lot of good changes. Nothing that's you necessarily can write home to your mother about, but it's some good stuff. So I encourage a green vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
The Secretary will take the roll on final passage for the Conference Committee report. Senator Househouse, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report Senator Herr votes aye.
Senator Herr votes aye.
Senator Rest votes aye.
Senator Rest votes aye.
Senator Fate votes aye.
He's already voted.
Okay. Senator Muhammad votes aye.
Senator Muhammad votes aye. Senator Jasinski, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Duckworth votes no.
Senator Duckworth votes no.
Mr. President.
Senator Househouse.
Mr. President, I report Senator May-Quade votes aye.
Senator May-Quade votes aye. All senators having voted, who desires a vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There have been 34 ayes and 33 nays. The Conference Committee report is adopted and passed. Members, we will now go to Senator Port for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the foregoing recommendation and Conference Committee report on Senate File 2298 be now adopted and the bill be repassed as amended by the Conference Committee.
To that motion, please explain.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this is the Housing Omnibus Policy and Finance Bill. As it went through Conference Committee, there were a few changes to the Senate position. I'll go first through the appropriations. The Family Homelessness Prevention FHPAP program, we put $8.35 million. That's a decrease from the Senate position of $10.15 million. We kept the $2 million for Greater Minnesota infrastructure. We kept $2 million for community-based first-gen down payment assistance. We added $2 million for the agency first-gen down payment assistance, added $2 million for workforce home ownership, $2 million to the challenge program. There was a $2 million reduction from the Community Stabilization Fund from 2023 and 24. And there was $50 million authorized for housing infrastructure bonds that is carried in the $3.8 million increase in the tails. As far as policy goes in this bill, there is no zoning and land use changes in this bill. Unfortunately, we were not able to get to agreement. However, working with the cities, what we did hear was a need for incentives to do this work. So there is an incentive provision in this bill that allows for municipalities which are starting to make some of the zoning and land use changes to allow for more construction to get additional points towards their applications for MHFA's scoring through their regular programs. There's also a few landlord and tenant changes. There is an update to the heating language that we passed in 2023. There is a definition update, technical change in 504B to apply to rent escrow action. And there is a provision for survivors of domestic abuse, which is a technical update which requires that the existing requirement preserve private information. Manufactured housing, the enactment of Chapter 308C, which passed last year, has been pushed back a year from August 2025 to August 2026. That was agreed to by all the stakeholders. There is a prevailing wage provision in here which updates the prevailing wage rate allowed for carpentry work on certain construction projects which solely receive federal low-income tax credits. This was agreed to by the Carpenters Union, approved by DLI, and the rest of the building trades. There is a report required by MMB on options for public housing authorities to participate in the federal RAD program while remaining eligible for GO bonds. There is a minor change to include a rework of the recommendation of the Sustainable Housing Task Force, requiring the development of new policy framework by the agency. There were a few provisions that the Senate carried that were removed in conference. Unfortunately, Senator Abler and I will have to live to fight another day for senior rent stabilization. The insurance task force was removed from this bill and may be moving separately in the commerce bill. And a Senate provision which prohibited MHFA from collecting admin expenses on their programs was removed. Other than that, everything that started in our Senate bill remains. I hope we are able to adopt this report and pass it. Happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions? We're on the motion to adopt the committee report. Seeing none, all in favor of adoption of the committee report, say aye. All those opposed, say no. The motion prevails. The committee report is adopted. The secretary will give the bill its third reading.
Senate File Number 2298, a bill for an act relating to housing, establishing a budget for the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency.
Third reading. Any discussion? Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank Senator Chair Port and others for their continued hard work on housing. We've had numerous conversations in committee on this floor, and Mr. President, members of this body are well aware that we are in a housing shortage. Prices continue to rise, and it is straining the family budgets across Minnesota. And I appreciate the hard work that has been done and continues. Unfortunately, this bill, and I don't necessarily blame Senator Port, nor the members that I have the privilege of serving on the Housing Committee either. I do not blame them. But this bill fundamentally fails to solve or at least move us in a substantial, substantive direction of relieving that hardship. Reducing the prices, whether it be home ownership, whether it be rentals. There's a provision in the bill that is going to allow for more HIBs. Housing infrastructure bonds are expensive and they're irresponsible. They are, as I mentioned already, very expensive. In the bill that we have before us, there's we heard Senator Port in the brief description here, a clarification in the definition in some landlord-tenant provisions. Among those is a heating provision, and we discussed that this morning in the conference committee, and even the conferees recognize that the language before us in the bill, in the conference report, I should say, is not what they intend to have become law. There was a discussion that to potentially send it back to make that change, but that did not happen, and the intent is to make a change in another bill. But the point I'm trying to make, Mr. President and members, is the language before us has not been vetted. And there is ambiguity in there. And that's why, despite the good efforts by Chair Port, by my fellow members of the committee, this bill falls short. It falls short, and unfortunately at this time I'm going to have to be a no vote. Thank you.
Any other discussion before we go to the author? The last voice we'll hear is that of Senator Port, and then we will vote. Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members. Stable housing is the foundation of everything that matters most to Minnesotans. To success in school for our kids, stable employment, better health, and every important aspect of life. But as costs are hitting historic highs across the state, that dream of a safe and stable home for every Minnesotan is slipping away. Our state is facing a growing crisis, and while this bill offers a step towards meaningful reform through investments in home ownership, building more affordable housing, and desperately needed support for families facing homelessness, there is still so much more work to be done. I want to touch just on three pieces. First, the eviction moratorium. More families across the state are one crisis away from facing homelessness than ever before in our state's history. With state and federal assistance running out, eviction levels hitting all-time highs, and the Trump administration's threatening to eliminate the Section 8 program, these critical investments in keeping families in their home are more badly needed than ever to protect seniors in greater Minnesota, families with kids, and communities in every corner of our state. If we can't keep families in their homes now, the consequences in the long run will cost us much more than we can imagine. Secondly, federal tariffs are projected to increase the cost of new homes by $10,000 to $20,000, and over 100,000 families nationwide are priced out of homeownership for every $1,000 increase in cost. Families are already struggling to afford the cost of housing, and as the price of homes goes up, less is available to spend on education, a healthcare emergency, groceries, or a broken down car. Members on both sides of the aisle have recognized the desperate need to build new homes, and as instability continues to drive housing costs out of reach for more families, we have to come together and find new and creative solutions. Finally, this year, the median cost of a new home in our state hit $540,000, and the average monthly house payment hit $2,551. These increases are devastating, and these costs are far beyond what most families can afford. Our state is standing on a cliff where the dream of homeownership is vanishing for families everywhere. And while we work to do everything possible to invest in building new homes that families can afford, we also have to consider solutions that tear down barriers and cut red tape, including zoning and land use reform. While opposition from city organizations was able to block solutions to build more starter homes that families can afford from passing this year, the issue is only going to get harder the longer we wait. Acting now is critical to building a future where our kids can afford to live in the community that they grew up in, and where seniors can afford to stay in their homes. We will be back next year with a new and stronger bill to meet the needs of families across our state. While this bill represents a meaningful step forward in helping families afford a home that meets their needs, our state's approach to the housing crisis simply has to change. We have to seriously examine how we are prioritizing housing as a comprehensive issue, as a budget priority, as a policy issue, and as a true crisis that is threatening the well-being and safety of families now, not just decades into the future. Members, this is a good vote for the moment, but we must change the way that we consider housing as a priority in our state. Thank you, Mr. President. Members, please vote green.
The Secretary take the roll on final passage. Senator Hostel, are you ready for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7?
Thank you, Mr. President. I report Senator Herr votes aye.
Senator Herr votes aye.
Senator Rest votes aye.
Senator Rest votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
And Senator Mohammed votes aye. Senator Jasinski for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Duckworth votes no.
Senator Duckworth votes no.
Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Housley votes no. All senators having voted who desires a vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 36 ayes and 31 nays, the bill is passed as amended by the Conference Committee. Members, I'll now recognize Senator Putnam for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the foregoing recommendations and Conference Committee report on Senate File 1959 be now adopted and that the bill be repassed as amended by the Conference Committee.
To that motion, Senator Putnam.
Mr. President, members, thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit more about the work that we've done in the Senate Subcommittee on Veterans in the Military. I'd like to just take a brief moment again to thank the folks who worked so hard on this bill throughout the session, especially to Nick Roth, and in advance to his soon-to-be-born baby in about 2 weeks. There will be another Roth in the world who will be likely just as cool and dedicated as his dad. We also had the help of Keely Spence, Haley Bloom Peterson, the mighty Matt Kelleher, and the Wonder Twins, Andrew Erickson and Tom Watson. And of course, all those who participated in the committee as members or by presenting your ideas with us. Folks, we did good work, we helped people, and we're keeping the promises that we made. We made a few changes to this bill in Conference Committee, and I want to talk about those very briefly. Our work understands that the veterans' homelessness and food insecurity and mental health are interrelated concerns. In this body, when we passed this bill, we made a historic investment in vets' homes, understanding the importance of having a stable place to live. But through the process of the Conference Committee, we actually improved a little bit by also putting some resources toward food insecurity. We're creating a new program, Veterans Meals on Wheels for Greater Minnesota. We're extending the capacity for Metro Meals on Wheels to keep doing the work that they were doing, but without including extra resources to do so. And we put more money into suicide prevention. We funded the Department of Military Affairs for their recruitment and enlistment bonuses so that every person who joined the Guard will still have access to the education benefits that they were promised. We funded Senator Seeberger and Senator Housley's Hometime Heroes program that provides outdoor opportunities for first responders and for veterans. And we also know that when one steps up to serve, their families often do too. So we expanded educational opportunities for veterans and their families, ensuring continued access to higher education benefits for their spouses and for their children. And we created an offset for activated members of the National Guard. So if you get called up to help put out a wildfire, you might get a little bump to your pension. And last, we respect the service of those who have sacrificed for Americans and American values by formally recognizing the service of Hmong and other allied veterans who fought along U.S. forces in the secret war in Laos. We should be proud of this bill. Members, we should be proud that Minnesota has stepped up to help heal this old wound. In this bill, members, we have kept our promises to all who have served and all who will serve. Now, members, there's more good stuff in this bill, but you already know that because you already voted for it. Just a couple of weeks ago, we passed most of this bill unanimously and in 9 minutes. This is a good bill. This is a good cause. This is important stuff, and I'm ready to answer your questions.
Any other discussion? We're on adoption of the committee report. Seeing none, all in favor of, oh, I'm sorry, Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to, being on the conference committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be with Senator Putnam and Senator Gustafson in this bill, Senate File 1959, has been passed by the conference committee. It ceases to amaze me that we can take a bill into Finance Committee and then amend into Finance such a controversial piece of legislation that is in Article 2. This piece of legislation I'm talking about is regarding the war on Laos, the secret war on Laos that's in the bill. It basically has an innate way of dividing communities. We talk about allied forces, but we don't mention them except for those who were mentioned in the bill, the Naturalization Act, the Hmong Naturalization Act that was passed. And so we have many veterans in this state of Minnesota who came and had fought in the Southeast Asian conflict. The Filipino, the Khmer, the Lao Khmer, many of who have been left out of this, they use it as kind of a cover to say all allied forces, but they don't mention them out specifically, and it would be so much better if it was. According to testimony, before the bill was even brought to committee, introduced in the floor, brought to the bill before the Senate, there was nobody that came out to me as a veteran or other veterans in the Senate to talk about this issue that was brought forward. No military organization came to discuss this issue about having this legislation put forward. I spoke the other day to former representative, I should say, Mr. Bob Detmer, who served in the House, who was the chairman of the Veterans Committee over in the House. And I asked him about this language that was in this bill and told him that we were having a conference committee on this. And he says, this is something that he was encouraging all members who fought in the Southeast Asian conflict to come forward and to be part of it and to get along. And my understanding is that many do not get along within that part of the country. My concern is that Senate File 1959 has left out the Cambodian, the Vietnamese, the Thai, and other ethnic groups that were serving there. And so, Mr. President, I'm not going to be able to support this bill today. And even though what we did is in the bill as far as increasing money for veterans' homes and increasing necessary items within the bill, this basically throws the bill into disarray, and I am a no vote on the bill. Thank you.
Members, what I'd like to do is go to third reading, and then you can certainly talk, but it's probably more appropriate for us to adopt the committee report and then go to third reading. You will be able to talk when we get to third reading. That's what I'm saying, okay? If you want to talk to not adopting it, the others just wanted to talk. So if you're talking to not wanting to adopt the committee report, then we'll go to Senator Howell.
Thank you, Mr. President. And members, this bill needs to go back and include the important pieces and make it right. This bill is going to be more controversy because of what Senator Anderson had just talked about. I think we need to take care of all these folks. And I think if we're going to extend these benefits
to the SGU, which I do believe they may deserve. But I do believe that before we do that, we should take care of our National Guard and Reserve folks that are Minnesota citizens, and they should get the same benefit that we're going to extend to these folks. And that's why it needs to go back, it needs to be revisited, and they need to be included before we do this. So I urge members to vote no on adopting the conference committee report and send it back for reconsideration. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Klein.
Mr. President, I request a roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Senator Powell, you want to speak now or on third reading? Okay, no problem. Anyone else want to speak now? Senator Putnam.
Mr. President, I just want to make one point of clarification. The language about the SGU forces was in the bill when we already passed it. It was not added in conference. All of you have already voted for it once. The only difference in the language that we have now is we took one line, a couple lines from the House provision that changed where the report that would be released at the end of the process. So I'm going to state that again. You have everyone in this room, already voted for this provision.
Senator Weissenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, that may be true. It can always go to conference committee, and we were hoping to pull that provision out or increase it so more people would have these benefits. And I would also urge, like Senator Howe said, to not pass this and let's send it back and make it better. And let's support our National Guardsmen in Minnesota. Thank you.
Senator Hurd, did you want to speak now or on third reading? Senator Hurd.
I do have a question. Not question, maybe I just should say it instead of asking Senator Putnam on this because it happened immediately, and I heard one member just trying to discredit the service of SGU and also the benefit that they got. The benefit is very basic. The benefit is just an ID with a veteran statement on the ID and license plate that declare SGU as Special Guerrilla Unit. You ask other military that don't have that benefit, ask them if they want that. I think they want more than that. For us, it's just a name and honor. And so we just take the skeleton almost nothing. So there's really no benefit. It's just a word of benefit, but there's actually no benefit. So don't misinform folks out there that we got great benefit. No. It's just the name of honor. Actually, the benefit is so basic. We will bury our folks at our usual cemetery. We'll take care of our own. We just want to be known of our legacy, that we did serve this country. Our forebears died for this country. And that's the greatest honor at all. It's not the benefit. So just want to make that clear and ask for us to support the adoption of committee report. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other discussion on adoption? Seeing none, the secretary will take the roll on adoption of the conference committee report. Senator Hochschild, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.1.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report Senator Rust votes aye.
Senator Rust votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
And Senator Mohammed votes aye. Senator Rasmussen, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Jasinski votes no.
Senator Jasinski votes no.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Duckworth votes no.
And Senator Duckworth votes no. Are you voting? All members having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 38 ayes and 25 nays, the conference committee report is adopted. And the secretary will give the bill its third reading.
Senate File Number 1959, a bill for an act relating to state government establishing a budget for the Department of Military Affairs and the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Third reading. Any other discussion? Senator Pa, you were one to speak on third reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I stand today in speaking to this bill, which was really hard to vote for, the conference committee report, because I'm really deeply disappointed that the Senate version of the SGU Veterans Bill did not prevail in the conference committee. Instead, we adopted a much weaker House position, which significantly limits the number of people who would be eligible for this benefit. By almost 70% of the people would not be eligible. As a result, many of our veterans who have honorably served will be excluded once this bill gets passed. Many of them who have come out here to the state capitol in both the House and Senate committees, in both our chambers, in wheelchairs, in walkers, with canes, but they came out hoping that we will finally pass something that recognizes them and gives them some benefits. But 70% of them will never see it. And not only that, but many of them will die from now until the time we actually do something to give those 70% of our SGU veterans. So what we pass is not a win. The only reason why I agreed to it is because at least 30% of them will get something. But I am so sad today as I rise because those veterans came out and they thought this year was finally the year they were going to be recognized. We had a celebration outside this Capitol in which they showed up and thought this was the year. The recognition and the benefits are so minimal that it doesn't even cost our state barely anything that can be absorbed by the department, yet we're unwilling to do that. It is unacceptable to me. I struggle with it so much because you cannot imagine the pain not just these veterans feel, but their families, generations of people, including myself, who is the daughter of a veteran. The pain we feel when we see our elders suffer for the last 50 years, the stories they would tell us, the wounds that they still have in their bodies. Yet the basic recognitions, we can't even give them. And many of them, like I said, will not be here if we finally do something to cover these other 70%. I'm extremely disappointed in this body, in this Capitol, but especially with our House chamber, who was unwilling to move, and with our governor, who was unwilling to help us move to the Senate position. I hope that the next time that we bring this bill back up to fight for those 70%, that you all will help me and that you will look at them and realize these are real people who have given their blood, sacrifices for this country. And every day, they are our neighbors, they're our families, our community, and they deserve better than this today. They deserve better. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Putnam, and then we're going to, Senator Mitchell.
Thank you. I just want to speak briefly on the same part of the bill. To be clear, Hmong individuals, even under federal law, have categories and recognitions. So for example, in our bill talking about burials in cemeteries, this is already something contemplated under federal law because this group has been deemed so valuable during the Vietnam War. And if anyone says that, well, they've never heard about this from a veteran, literally just this week, you just had to walk down to the end of the mall to the ceremony, and it was a group of all people. People who were American citizens at the time and people who fought in these units coming together. And yes, the American citizens who fought at the time saying how much they appreciated this group, how valuable it was. So if you haven't heard a veteran talk about this, you just weren't listening or you weren't making yourself available. But again, I would just like to point out that even our federal government has acknowledged how valuable this group is and has extended benefits. So this isn't something new or unique. And we're also working on better benefits for Guard people. I've had talk with Congress people to help improve some of those laws on a federal level as too. We can work on two things at the same time. If someone has a good idea to help Guards people in the state, we've taken them, we've heard them, we will listen to them in the future. We can do this and do those other things. But we need to honor a group that helped us during wartime and was part of the war and are veterans. Thank you.
Senator Herr.
Thank you, Mr. President, for allowing me to say another time, and this is for third reading. You know, there's an old saying in my culture that if what I say doesn't make sense, and just throw that away in the sunset. But if things that I say that make sense, then keep it as medicinal for your health. So, being that I'm just composed this delivery in a few minutes here, and I appreciate the word of Senator Pye and Senator Mitchell, and you know the truth is already revealed, as Senator Pye does say. But the other part is that we have to take our legislation to process, and the legislation take time. I also want to appreciate Senator Putnam for working very hard in the negotiation on all this. And for those who pass misinformation out there, I think the truth already came out on the Senate floor here about what I say earlier about the benefit is not fully benefit. The amount of people, there's only about no more than 1,000 Hmong SGU left in our state. And you know, only partial number of that will gain the benefit. But I appreciate that we come this far. Confirming and recognizing the Hmong SGU as veterans is not just the want of me as my heritage, but it's for Minnesota legacy. it's almost, if I'm being self-centered here, it's almost like I'm doing the state a favor. But as a senator among descent, a person with equal voting certificate as you, what we do here tailor the future. The future generation gonna ask, how the Hmong people get here? Their highland of Laos, so remote from civilization. If you will ask the immigration office in 1975 to rank the Hmong people how they can get here to the United States, I think they will put at the end of all, or don't even open the door for Hmong people at all, because they will line up all their elitists of the country to come to this country. And we didn't even know or dawn that there's educational opportunity in this country or economic opportunity in this country. What happened was that we are being recruited by our State Department. And our State Department in 3-day parachute M16 rifle to a village. So our enemies see M16 rifle in the Hmong village. Of course, they will identify us as their enemy, and automatically we have to be aligned with the United States. And then being recruited, being trained in 3 days with the mission that 100 Hmong sacrificed their life for one U.S. soldier. That was my elder commanded to be. And it's Minnesota legacy because the future generation of Hmong will be blended with other ethnic group here. They may be named Johnson, or Kent, McCune, Rest. They will have different names. They will not have Asian origin name, but they will ask their great-grandparent 50 years ago, where do our ancestors came from? And I'm a quarter Hmong. Where do I came from? How do I get here? Well, not business opportunity, but through shedding blood for this country. And with that military family and ideal, that helped our young generation to be good steward of this country, as well as protecting this country, value this nation in terms of God and country. I want to derail a little bit to talk a little bit about Harding High School. 30 years ago, the junior ROTC almost disappeared. There's no enlistment of junior ROTC in Harding High School until the Hmong community arrived, and then now there's line and line every year that want to be in ROTC because of our military heritage. We were Agiran in trade, but we also military because we had to protect our highland of Laos. Honestly, our elder never wanted to be here. Our elder rather live in a remote area of Laos, in the highland of Laos. But modernization caught up with us and forced us to be here through the blood that we shed for the United States. So this is not what I want, but what we should have is to honor just so few of them left, 1,000 or less, for the better Minnesota, so that our future generation can value that how we get here is not making noodles for someone, but how we get here is through our blood, our bravery, and our sacrifice for glory. So I know it's not a perfect provision, but it's the best that our two bodies can do at this time. And there will be a process in the language that is now for those about 70% or so. They may have to wait through the process and may take a year or so for them to confirm for the smallest benefit that they get. But what's matter is from this day when they pass the legislation, they will not be known just SGU or thank you for your service, or yes, you're a veteran, but it will coin in our statute that those who fought for the United States during the Secret War in Laos are special guerrilla unit veterans. And that's the most important of all. And thank you for listening, and thank you, Sam Putnam, for your leadership on this.
Final words from Senator Putnam.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, we passed this bill unanimously in 9 minutes a couple weeks ago. You stood up for veterans. Here's another chance for you to stand up for veterans and for all those who have served. As I said before, you all already voted in the affirmative for the SGU provision, and no one has made an even remotely rational argument for why this second version is inferior and justifies a negative vote on the bill as a whole. You already voted for this. You were fine with it 2 weeks ago. It's an important, significant moral decision, and it's the right thing to do. You also already voted for vets' homes and all those other great initiatives that we had in that bill just a couple weeks ago. You stood up for vets. So if you're contemplating voting no today, you're voting against the new stuff. You're voting against Hometown Heroes. You're voting against Meals on Wheels in Greater Minnesota. You're voting against enlistment bonuses and resources for veterans' families. That's what you're doing if you vote against this bill today. Make no mistake. But I trust that you, too, will respect service. That you understand how important it is to stand for those who stood up for us. This is your chance to do that again. Members, we have done good work. We have kept our promises. Vote yes.
The Secretary will take the roll on final passage. Interesting. Members, please vote. Senator Hoshow, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report Senator Rest votes aye.
Senator Rest votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
And Senator Muhammad votes aye.
And Senator Muhammad votes aye. Senator Hoshow.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report Senator Marty votes aye.
Senator Marty votes aye. Any other votes? All senators having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 45 ayes and 19 noes, the bill is passed as amended by the conference committee. Remaining under motions and resolutions, we will revert to messages from the House. The secretary will read the message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce that the House has adopted the recommendation and report of the Conference Committee on House File Number 2130 and repassed said bill in accordance with the report of the committee, so adopted. House File Number 2130, a bill for an act relating to public safety, extending the length of driver's license revocations related to certain offenses. House File Number 2130 is herewith transmitted to the Senate. Signed, Patrick Duffy Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
Senator Latz for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the foregoing recommendations and conference committee report on House File 2130 be now adopted and that the bill be repassed as amended by the conference committee.
Senator Latz to that motion.
Mr. President, this is the conference committee report for the DWI interlock bill. It was born of tragedy in St. Louis Park and hopefully will prevent or take steps toward preventing future similar tragedies by extending the look-back period and by requiring the interlock program and extending the duration for people to be on the interlock program as a safety device to help stop drunk driving. The bill's framework is intended to use incentives and punishments to drive people into the interlock program rather than taking chances and driving without valid licenses or insurance on our streets without the protections of making sure that they are sober while they are driving. The provisions that have changed since this bill passed off the Senate floor had to do with voluntary and involuntary withdrawal from the interlock program. There was an amendment on the Senate floor that did a number of things that we have made some modifications to, as the bills were almost identical from when they originally landed on the Senate floor here. With regard to the voluntary withdrawal from the interlock program, the floor amendment here basically replicated what the driver and vehicle services policy is for handling those cases. So we decided not to put that policy into a statute and allow the flexibility at DVS. So that provision was dropped. There was a provision in that amendment that provided that individuals could not be required to continue to pay the service contracts for the interlock device after they have discontinued participation in the program. So that remains in this bill. And then with regard to involuntary termination or separation from the interlock program, we put together a graduated schedule to address the issue of credit for time already served in the program. The floor amendment here mandated full credit for time served, regardless of the circumstances leading to the withdrawal from the program. The bill comes back now with full credit for that time served if the violation that led to the suspension or withdrawal from the interlock program were non-alcohol related. If the reason for separation from the program were alcohol related but not driving related, then a person would receive credit for half of the time they have already served on the interlock program when they resume participation. And if the reason for withdrawal or termination from the interlock program were alcohol-related driving offense, then a person would not get any credit at all for the time that they have served and would have to restart the time for the program from the very beginning. Those are the changes, members. I appreciate your support. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any other discussion on the notion of adoption of the committee report? Seeing none, all in favor of of adoption of the committee report, say aye. All those opposed, say no. The motion prevails. The secretary will give The bill is third reading.
House File Number 2130, a bill for an act relating to public safety, extending the length of driver's license revocations related to certain offenses.
Third reading. Any other discussion before the bill author has the final word? Seeing none, Senator Latz, final word before we vote.
Mr. President, the bill has a number of provisions in it that will make the DWI interlock and driver's license revocation system in Minnesota work better for law enforcement, for drivers, and for public safety. And it has its most important central features will make our roads safer to drive on. I encourage a green vote.
The Secretary will take the roll on final passage. Senator Hochschild, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report Senator Rest votes aye.
Senator Rest votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
And Senator Mohammed votes aye.
And Senator Mohammed votes aye. Senator Rasmussen, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Duckworth votes aye.
Senator Duckworth votes aye.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Jasinski votes aye.
Senator Jasinski votes aye. All senators having voted, who desires a vote? The Secretary will close the roll. There being 66 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed as amended by the conference committee. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. Are we under announcements?
Well, we're not really under announcements. We're going to get ready to recess, but you wanted to make sure you could quickly say your thank yous.
Yes.
Because it wouldn't be an appropriate place no matter what, because we're not going to the 13th order of business.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. I failed to thank folks when I made my bill presentation. I think I should just do it at the top of the presentation from now on, because I tend to do that. So very quickly, of course, my fellow conferees, Mr. President, you know who you are. But I especially wanted to be sure to thank Amanda Peterson and Jackie Clinton, the researchers who did a tremendous amount of work on this bill, as well as Alex Will, who works for me in my office, worked very, very hard to set up our conference committee, and our nonpartisan staff, Olivia Severson from Senate Council, Ben Johnson from House Council, House staff Jack Dockendorf provided a tremendous amount of help as well as my co-author, Senator Port. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Murphy for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move a brief recess for the purpose of appointing conference committees.
All in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Senate is now in recess for the purposes of selecting or appointing conference committees. I know.
Mr. President, is there a privileged report at the desk?
There is a privileged report at the desk. The Secretary will read the report.
Senator Murphy from the Subcommittee on Conference Committees recommends that the following senators be, and they hereby are, appointed as a conference committee on Senate File Number 1740. Senators Swedzinski, Kunish, Mayquade, Gustafson, and Coleman. Senator Murphy moves that the foregoing appointments be approved.
To that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The motion prevails. Members, I'm going back to Senator Murphy.
Mr. President, I'm going to move a recess to the call of the president. I'm looking at Leader Johnson.
Thank you.
Leader Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick question. What's the nature of the recess? How long do you think it would last? And then if we could get a heads up when you plan on coming back.
Senator Murphy, to the question.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are awaiting potential or likely conference committee reports coming over from the House, hoping to get human services policy and the judiciary budget. So we're going to recess and wait for those. I know you all go back to your offices and fire up your computers and watch the House to make sure you understand what's happening there. I'm only kidding about that part. But we will make sure that members have at least 30 minutes notice before we come back in. And with that, members, I'll move a recess to the call of the president.
On that motion, all in favor, say aye. Senator Johnson, did you have another question? I'm sorry. Senator Johnson.
Not so much a question, Mr. President, but just an announcement. In the back room, there are some treats and some finger foods back there in celebration of the great national holiday of Norway, 7. Mai. So it's the Independence Day of Norway, and just as a way of remembering and celebrating, we've got a little bit of treats back there. So just want to make that announcement as well.
Thank you, Senator. To the motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Senate is now in recess to the call of the president.